Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. We are back into reveals for Fighter's Ambition, the second set of the Zenkai series. And if you guys watched yesterday's video, I know that was probably a little bit harder to watch because I was kind of just ragging on that archetype all up and down. But today I'm actually pretty excited for this archetype, and we'll be talking about the Android 13 red archetype. Getting some red androids is definitely very interesting. It's not really a color we typically get pure android support, and this deck opens up a lot of room for creativity, so we'll talk about that in today's video, some ways you can customize the deck. Anyways though, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video, and if you guys want to support the channel, there are tons of ways to do so down in the description. But if you want to buy any cards on TCG Player, it does really help me out if you were to use my link in the description to TCG Player. I really do appreciate it. Anyways, let's jump right on into things. We have the unawakened side of the leader, Giro's Supercomputer. So we have permanent, this card can't attack, activate main switch to rest mode, look at the top 5, and add any red android. Now that's pretty cool until you go through and realize there aren't that many great generic red androids. If there were a few more, that'd be pretty cool, but I mean, it still searches out most of your archetypes, so that's fine. Awaken relates 4 or less, or you have 2 or more energy and 1 or more Android 14 and 15 cards, both 1-drop red in your battle area and or drop. You may switch this card and up to 1 of your energy to active mode and add cards from life to hand until you have 6 life left. So basically, once you have 14 and 15 in play or in your drop, if they happen to get KO'd very early, you can awaken. That's your alternate awaken condition. Then we have Android 13, Terror's Inception. When this card attacks, choose 1. You can either play an Android 14 or 15, both red with energy cost of 1 from your hand, or you just simply draw a card. Playing the card from your hand is like fine. It can help you set up Z energy, but it's not going to be a true +1 to your hand, so it gets a little bit weird. I typically just end up swinging and drawing the card until I get to my Z leader, which is really good. Then we have Auto. Place 1 android from your Z energy in the owner's drop. When you play a red android card, add up to 1 red android from your drop to your Z energy. So there are some effects where you want to have like specifically 13, 14, and 15 in your Z energy, so that effect just helps you kind of fix your Z energy. Again, like, this does go back to the same problem from yesterday's video where these decks don't have very easy ways to actually generate Z energy, at least when compared to Sin or Gogeta, but there are other saving graces of this deck that I do actually like a lot. Then we have the Android 13 Nightmarish Combination Z Leader for a 2 Z energy cost, not too bad. Z Awaken for 1, relays 4 or less over a red Android 13. When this card attacks, play up to 1 Android 14 or 15, both red with energy costs of 1 from your hand or drop. So now you're actually generating Z energy pretty well because you're playing battle cards from your drop that then end up drawing you a card, and then you can just combo them off for Z energy. That's really good. Activate battle once per turn. Place 1, 13, 14, and 15 from your Z energy in the drop. Draw 1 card. This card gains plus 5k and double strike for the turn. Notice that is not only during your turn, so defensively your leader has the ability to gain a sensu bean. That is very, very strong. That effect is really, really good. So yeah, this leader, I like it quite a bit. All right, now we have some base stuff for the deck. So we have Android 15 and 14 Mechanical Assailant. I'll just kind of explain them both in one shot since they do the same thing. Auto limit 1, if leader's a red android card and all your energy is mono red, when this card's played, choose 1. You can either add the other guy to your hand, so if you play 14, you can add 15 and vice versa, or if your leader's a Z leader, you can draw 1. So that's where you start playing them from the drop on your Z leader to start drawing. But in the early game, these help you get awakened. So you want to open one of these, you want to play one of them to grab the other one. Then on turn 2, you can, hard cast this if you don't have your unison, which in this deck, SS4 Gogeta unison is very, very good, as it is in most red decks, but it's particularly good in this deck. Helps you get awakened, helps you get into your main engine, which we'll talk about in a bit. So these are both probably 4-ofs in my opinion. I mean, in my list, they're currently 4-ofs because you need them to get awakened. Then we have Android 13 Uninvited Guest. We have a 1-drop 4k Union Absorb once per turn for 1 energy. But I guess read the auto first because typically you're going to play it first. So when this card's played, look at the top 5 and add any red android, or actually any android with a cost of 3 or less. So that's one of the cool things this deck does, is that it doesn't always restrict you to red androids. And we'll see that in the Union Absorb as well. So back to the Union Absorb for 1 energy. If your leader's a red A13 and your opponent has 3 or more energy, place 1 14 and 15 from your drop under this card, then play 1 A13 from your with energy cost of 7 from your deck on top of this card in active mode, then shuffle your deck. They just always love to give red like the best stuff. Like, this is not better than SS4 Gogeta or Sin, don't get me wrong, but like, they obviously created this with SS4 Gogeta in mind. Playing this in rest mode for free with SS4 Gogeta means that you can use a Union Absorb and then play the 13 in active mode, because that's what the card says. It's very, very strong. Notice too, this does not say red Android 13. There are many older cards you can play in this deck that work well with this guy. We're going to read a couple right now. So we have the one that comes out with the archetype. We have Android 13 Total Annihilator, which is a very good card. 7 drop, 25k, deflect, double strike, permanent. If an A13 is under this card gains dual attack and isn't affected by the skills of red sand cards with 20k power or less in any of your opponent's areas. So that's just super thematic. It's really good, to be honest. I mean, if you're up against SS4 Gogeta, hopefully that deck gets nerfed a little bit so that this actually has like a comparable power level to that deck. But if you're up against that deck, they can't minus this with like the SS4 Vegeta, for example, which is kind of cool. Auto and card attacks, use one card from under this card in a combo that skill is negated for the turn, and choose one of your opponent's battle cards, and it gets minus 25k for the turn. So this swings for 30k double strike with dual attack. Notice if you have your Gogeta units now from a previous turn, this is a 1 energy play. This is a very good 1 energy play. That's the number one thing I like about this deck, is that, you know, fact. One thing to note here is that if you start using this card to a point where the only card under it is Android 13, or yeah, Android 13, let's say this survives a turn and you dual attack the previous turn, got the other androids out from under it. If you go into your next turn and Android 13 is the only card under Total Annihilator, when you attack, it is very important that you declare a dual attack first, because that is an activated effect. So you want to activate dual attack. This way you can use the auto to combo the 13 from under your Annihilator, and then dual attack will still resolve as normal. It's a very nitpicky, like kind of rule sharky thing, but that is the proper way the card will work to the best of its ability. Then we have Activate Main on there for 2 energy. If your opponent has 3 or more energy, you choose 1, 14, and 15 in your battle area and or drop. Play this card and place chosen cards under it. So I just love how this Activate Main allows you to play this card in other Android 13 decks. I mean, this is probably the best Android 13 deck in my opinion. And I love also how it's a red deck that has elements of hand control. We'll see that more in a second here. So for the other ones you can play Super Android 13 Cores of the Trio. This is a 7-drop. Ignore the successor, obviously. This is a deflect triple attacker. Permanent if leader's yellow or an android. It's a free combo, which is really nice considering it's a multicolor card. Auto if your leader's an A13. When this card attacks, your opponent chooses one of the battle cards and KOs it. That's not once per turn. This is triple attack, so swing 3 times, kill 3 battle cards. Not bad at all. Then we have Adamantite Avenger, which I think is my personal favorite. Might be actually one of the harder ones to use, but I do like it a lot. So activate main once per turn. If your leader's an A13, you choose 3 androids in your drop and place in the bottom of your deck in any order. Choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode, KO it, then your opponent chooses 2 cards in their hand and places them in their drop area. So I like how this really adds a pretty thick element of hand control to a red deck. Getting the androids in the drop is usually pretty easy by the mid game, especially if you've been comboing a fair amount. But sometimes you want the androids in your drop, so it's a little awkward. The coolest thing about this is you have potential to recycle super combos, but the one android super combo you can play is kind of bad, especially compared to Raditz. So that makes this card a little bit awkward to use. The best one, in my opinion, has been Total Annihilator, and then Core of the Trio is a close second. Then there's also Unending Destruction, which is a pretty old card. If you can set up 2 of these, you actually end up looping most of your opponent's hand, unless they have a handful of extra cards in unisons. But anyways, we have a 7-drop Double Striker. When this card's played, your opponent chooses one of their battle cards and KOs it. And then Auto, when one of your opponent's battle cards is placed in the drop from any area by any of your skills other than this one, meaning this specific copy of the card, your opponent chooses 1 card in their hand and places it in the drop area. So theoretically, if you had 2 of these on the board and the only thing your opponent had in their hand was battle cards, your opponent would be forced to discard their whole hand, which in modern Dragon Ball is probably not super likely. I mean, people have unisons, people have blocker negates, but if they don't, or if they have a majority of battle cards or something along those lines, or other battle cards you can KO on the board, you can make them pitch multiple cards, which is kind of cool. I definitely lean more into Total Annihilator, like I said. Right now I'm playing like 2 Total Annihilator, 2 Core of the Trio, and 1 Adamantite Avenger. But I think there might be a certain format where you can go for 2 copies of Unending Destruction and try to go for that loop, but I don't know, this might not be the format for that, but still a very, very cool thing. You can play all these different A13s. Alright, then we have some more mid-game cards. So we have Android 15 and 14 Uninvited Guest. These cards are very similar, so the Activate main works like this. Basically, you pay 1. If your leaders are red Android 13, you have 2 or more energy, and you have the other Android, meaning if you want to play 15, you have to have 14 years Z energy. If you want to play 14, you have to have 15 years Z energy. Your opponent may choose 2 of their battle cards and have them get minus 20k for the turn. If they don't, you draw 1 card and play this card from your hand. And now, to my understanding, if your opponent chooses to minus 22 cards, these things go right back to your hand, is my understanding of it. So 15, when he attacks, he goes up to 20k, and then 14, he's a blocker. And at the if you have a red Android 15 in your Z energy, at the end of your turn, switch this card to active mode as a blocker. Then we have the Z Battle card, which is actually a really solid Z Battle card. Android 14 and 15, Team Up Terrors. We have a 2-drop 15k, Deflect, Unique, Dual Attack, Blocker. Permanent if you have a red Android with an energy cost of 7 or more in play. Reduce this card's cost in your Z deck by 1 red, so it's a 1-drop if you have Total Annihilator in play. Auto once per turn when this card attacks, use up to 1 Android card from your drop in a combo with its skills negated per turn, and this card gains barrier until the end of your opponent's next turn, so that's great for being a barrier blocker. Auto once per turn when this card activates blocker, switch it to active mode. So typically you swing with it once to get that Z energy and the blocker ability, and then you will be able to block this twice if you wanted to defensively. It's kind of weird that it's a 15k, so like, you know, even though it can block twice, in most cases you'd have to defend it to get that second block, which is kind of weird, but I mean, you know, it works. It's more so just good board presence, like going into multiple turns they'll survive typically. So that's kind of the cool thing about this card. And then just wrapping up, we have Android 17 finally freed, 3-drop 15k, critical, counterattack limit 1. If your leader is an A13 card, you get the attack and play this in rest mode, but you're typically never going to want to pay 3 for this because the permanent says if your leader is a red A13Z leader and your life's 3 or less, activate this card's counter from your hand without paying its energy cost. For some reason, red Z leader villains love getting free negates like this, which is kind of cool. Obviously, again, Sins is like a little bit better, but this is still a cool card. Now we have, I believe, the first Android super combo in the game, at least for red. Android 20 Inherited Evil super combo. If your leader is red and your leader is a Z leader, or you have 2 or more energy, or you have a Z battle card in play, when this card is using the combo, draw 1. The only upside of this card is that it's usable, or sorry, searchable by the unawakened side of the leader, and I guess by the A13 1-drop. Otherwise, I hate all the super combos that are like this. The stipulation is just way too much, especially when it's like early in the game, and these decks don't actually have good ways of making Z energy. So especially in this deck where you can play Android 14 Stoic Fist, make sure to look that card up. It's very good in this deck. You can take your life pretty much at will. So Raditz just makes a ton of sense in this deck. It's very good in this deck. Android Assault, we have a 1-drop counter attack. If your leader is an A13 card, you get the attack and add up to 1 red Android with energy cost of 1 from your drop to your hand. Permanent, if your leader is an A13Z leader, you can activate this card's counter from your hand by adding 1 card from your light to your hand instead of paying its energy cost. It's a cool card, but honestly, Testing the Op is just better. It's a very similar card and just operates better, gives you more defense. So just play Testing the Op instead. SS Deadly Bomber, cool side deck option, 2-drop activate main. If your leader's a red A13, choose one of your opponent's battle cards ignoring barrier, gets minus 20k for the turn, then play 1 A14 or 15, both red with energy costs of 3 from your hand, so it can play the uninvited guests if you wanted to do that. Cool side deck card though, because you do have to answer cards like Slug, maybe like SS4 Goku Absolute Annihilation, which would kind of suck because this would cost 3 against that card, but still having a main, or an in-archetype answer to barrier is kind of neat. But anyways, yeah, I like this archetype a lot because of the creativity it allows for. That's something we haven't really seen in archetypes as of late. This is not going to be great unless Gogeta or Sin get some pretty significant nerfs, but it is one that I like. I've been enjoying testing it. I like it a lot. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.